I want you to do something that's gonna sound a little bit weird, but just trust me. I want you to close your eyes and imagine the PlayStation 1. Got it? Good. Now, I want you to imagine the mascot of the PlayStation 1. First thing that pops into your head. Undoubtedly, you can already visualize a character, can't you? Maybe you said Crash, maybe Spyro, maybe even Lara Croft. Well, here's the thing. Whoever you just picked is wrong, technically speaking, because officially, PlayStation has never had a mascot. Not in 1995, not today, not ever. And that was deliberate. Ken Kutaragi, the father of the PlayStation, didn't want one. In his view, the Sony brand stood on its own. Mascots were for kids' consoles, and PlayStation was built to be something cooler, more mature, different. And if you doubt how serious he was about that, meet the mascot Sony killed. In 1995, PlayStation's American division created Polygon Man, a floating, polygonal head hooked up by an ad agency to front the console's launch in the West. He appeared at exactly one E3. Kutaragi saw him and had him erased. The reported crime? He was flat shaded, rendered with worse lighting than the console he was advertising. The face of PlayStation couldn't even show off the hardware. Within months, Polygon Man was gone, and Sony swore off mascots for good. But here's what makes the PlayStation 1 era genuinely strange. The throne sat empty on purpose, and characters fought their way onto it anyway. 4 of them built real claims to a crown Sony refused to hand out. A crown with no owner, no rules, and no official winner. Until today, because we're ranking all 4 claims from weakest to strongest. And one rule before we start, since it decides everything. This crown doesn't go to the character with the best game. It goes to the face, the character you saw when you thought of the console, who captured the essence and soul of what PlayStation was in that generation. Admittedly, there's no formula for that. The truth is much more nuanced and grey. You know a mascot when you see one, but weighing it means weighing everything. The fame, the games, the global recognition, and the loyalty to the platform. 4 contenders, 1 crown. Let's settle it. Number 4, Parappa the Rapper. And if you grew up in the West, this might be the name on the list you know least. A flat, paper-thin cartoon dog who raps, star of the 1996 game that pioneered the entire rhythm genre. But here's what almost nobody knows. Of every contender on this list, Parappa is the only one Sony actually owned. Published by Sony, first party. Full stop. And on December 6th, 1996, the exact day Crash Bandicoot launched in Japan, Parappa launched right beside him. 2 would-be faces of PlayStation arriving on the very same day. And inside Sony's orbit, some genuinely believed he was the answer. His creator, Rodney Greenblatt, said Sony was missing a face, and that Parappa was, in his words, the perfect one. Sony's own answer to Mario. So Parappa's case is real. No contender was more PlayStations than him. The only character on this entire board where the paperwork actually says Sony. And in Japan, he made a genuine run at the crown too. Parappa wasn't just a hit game there, he became a phenomenon. Big enough that Sony eventually gave him a spin-off, a sequel, and his own anime. 30 episodes on national television, built largely to keep up with the merchandise. In Japan, the rapping dog was really one of the faces of PlayStation. But this crown was never going to be decided in Japan alone. And in the West, Parappa was something very different, a cult favorite. Critically adored, remembered warmly, but his fame stopped at the edge of his own audience. And that's what finally holds him back. Because a mascot's fame doesn't stop with the people who play the games, it spills over. The true faces of that era were known to people who never touched a PlayStation. They were in the TV ads, on the magazine covers, in the playground arguments. In the West, Parappa's fame never made that jump. That's his ceiling, not the quality of his game, the reach of his face. A mascot you have to introduce isn't a mascot. So this is Parappa's strange little legacy. He's the technically correct answer. If the crown followed the paperwork, he wins. The only true PlayStation character on the entire board. But the crown doesn't follow the paperwork. Number 4 with full honours. And if PyRapper's problem was that not enough people knew him, the next contender has the exact opposite problem. Everybody on Earth knew her, and yet she still doesn't win. Number 3, Lara Croft. I know, put down the pitchforks, because before I can explain why she's this low, you first need to understand how big she actually was. For a few years in the late 90s, Lara Croft wasn't just the biggest character in gaming. She was one of the most famous fictional characters on the planet. Tomb Raider was a monster on PlayStation. Roughly 7 million copies sold, one of the biggest games on the entire console. But pay attention, every contender on this list sold millions. On sales alone, Lara doesn't actually stand out from this field. So what truly made her different? Well, her fame went places gaming had never been. Magazine covers, not gaming magazines, fashion magazines, culture magazines. The rock band U2 put her on stadium screens for a world tour. Hollywood came calling, and Angelina Jolie played her. She was the first video game character to become a genuine mainstream celebrity. If this crown went to the biggest star of the PlayStation era, this video would already be over. So why isn't this her crown? Well, let's give her full due first. Plenty of you, thinking of the PS1, genuinely pictured Lara. And Tomb Raider wasn't just big, it was one of the games that sold the machine itself. By fame, by reach, by pure star power, her case looks untouchable. Until you ask the one question that decides everything. Who did Lara Croft actually belong to? And here, my friends, the whole case collapses. Because Tomb Raider didn't launch on the PlayStation, it launched on the Sega Saturn first. The character half the world remembers as a PlayStation icon made her debut on Sony's rival, and it never stopped. Tomb Raider was on PC from day one, all era long. Lara wasn't made by Sony and wasn't owned by Sony. She belonged to Core Design and Eidos, a British studio and publisher who sold her wherever they pleased. And Sony knew it, painfully. Sean Layden, the man who would go on to run PlayStation Studios, admitted the one time he ever felt jealous, it was over Tomb Raider. He wanted her on PlayStation. So in 1997, Sony reached for the checkbook and locked Tomb Raider sequels onto PlayStation. But read the fine print on that deal. It only kept Lara off the other consoles, off Sega, off Nintendo. It said nothing about computers. So all through her so-called exclusive years, every Tomb Raider still released on PC, right alongside. Sit with that. Sony wanted the most famous woman in gaming so badly, they paid to borrow her. And even then, they only ever borrowed half. So here's the verdict, as plainly as I can put it. If this list ranked fame, Lara Croft wins. But a mascot is the face that belongs to the machine, and Lara never did. She wasn't PlayStation's icon, she was gaming's icon, who happened to make PlayStation her biggest home. Number 3, the biggest star in the room, and it still wasn't enough. 2 contenders left, and the next one is everything Lara wasn't. He never had her sales, her fame, or her Hollywood career, but what he did have was loyalty. Every game he made that generation lived on PlayStation and PlayStation only from his very first day. Quick message before we continue. If you really enjoy these deep dives into the games we grew up with and want even more, then you belong in the Squidz Squad. Memberships get you early access to videos like this one, behind the scenes stuff, and a say in what we cover next. Simply hit the join button down below. Now, back to the video. Number 2, Spyro the Dragon. He arrived in 1998, a small purple dragon from a young California studio called Insomniac Games, and for the next 3 years, he was everywhere. 3 classic games in 3 years, every one of them a PlayStation exclusive. While Lara wandered between machines, Spyro never set foot anywhere else. If you played Spyro, you played him on a PlayStation. There was no other way. And he didn't just live on the console. In an odd way, he felt like the console itself. Warm, colourful, a little cheeky. Spyro was the friendly half of PlayStation's personality, the one the demo discs carried into millions of living rooms, and there's a perfect little artifact of how deep he sat in the PlayStation family. Punch a secret code into the title screen of Crash Bandicoot, Warped, and hiding inside was a playable demo of Spyro. And Spyro's game returned the favour. A Crash demo tucked away behind its own code, two faces of one machine, stitched into each other's software. So with Lara disqualified for wandering, the loyal dragon looks unbeatable. Total exclusivity, genuine fame, a character who reads as PlayStation from every angle, which is what makes the truth so strange. Because Spyro didn't belong to Sony either. His creators at Insomniac never owned him. From the day he was born, Spyro was the property of Universal, the Hollywood movie giant that bankrolled his creation. And if that name rings a bell, it should. Universal also owned Crash Bandicoot. The two beloved faces of the PlayStation, the double act an entire generation remembers as Sony's, were both, quietly, the property of a film studio in Los Angeles. Sony's platformer war was fought with borrowed soldiers, and almost nobody playing those games had any idea. Time has only made that stranger. Insomniac, the studio that created Spyro, is today owned by Sony outright. But Spyro himself, after changing corporate hands for decades, he now belongs to Microsoft. The creators finally came home. The dragon never did. So why number 2? Because Spyro's claim fails on just one thing. And it isn't loyalty, and it isn't love. It's that he was second. He arrived 2 years after Crash, into a role Crash had already filled. Sony's marketing had already picked its fighter. The playground had already picked its icon. Spyro became the beloved younger sibling of the PlayStation family. Adored, exclusive, unmistakably PlayStation, but never quite the face of it. Spyro wasn't beaten on loyalty, he was beaten on arrival. Number 2. And in any other generation, the crown, which leaves one seat on the throne. But before the crown goes on, a moment for everyone who never made the shortlist. The wildcards, the forgotten, and one very special cat. Rayman, maybe the most successful character in this montage, but he belonged to Ubisoft, and he appeared on practically anything with a power button. A citizen of every console is a mascot of none. Gex, a wisecracking gecko built, from day one, to be somebody's mascot. He ended up on everything too, same verdict. Croc, his game began life as a pitch to Nintendo, starring Yoshi. Nintendo passed. The studio swapped in a crocodile and shipped it anyway. He auditioned for Nintendo before he ever performed for PlayStation. That's not a mascot, that's a free agent. Klonoa, the cult classic's cult classic. Ask anyone who actually played him and they'll tell you, he was one of the best platformers on the console. The problem is how few people ever played him. As for the true giants, Solid Snake and Cloud Strife, the two biggest stars the PS1 ever had, are missing from this list. And here's why. A mascot represents the machine itself. The character in the adverts, the symbol that means PlayStation before a single game is named. Snake and Cloud never did that job. Snake stood for Metal Gear. Cloud stood for Final Fantasy. They were the stars of their own worlds, not the face of the console they lived on. But there's one more, and this one's a twist, because Sony, the company that refused to have a mascot, did eventually make something dangerously close to one. In 1999, Japan got a little white cat called Toro. First party, Sony owned, and over the years, a genuine icon. He's cameoed in more than 30 PlayStation games. The catch? He never left Japan. The closest thing to a real official PlayStation mascot is a cat the West has never met. None of them touched the crown, because for one stretch of the 90s, the crown had an owner in everything but name. Number 1, Crash Bandicoot. Was it ever really in doubt? But here's what matters. Why he wins. And let's start with the stat that can seem hard to believe. Remember Lara, the most famous name on this list? Crash outsold her. On PlayStation, his biggest game outsold her biggest, and the Crash franchise outsold Tomb Raider entirely. This crown was never just about sales, but if it had been, Crash wins that too, because he wins for the one thing no other contender can claim. Sony didn't just tolerate Crash as their face, they used him as one. Go back to 1996. Kutaragi in Japan refuses to appoint a mascot, but Sony's American marketing has a war to fight against Nintendo, against Mario himself. And wars need a soldier. So when a young California studio called Naughty Dog delivers an orange marsupial built to be the anti-Mario, Sony's ad men do the single most mascot thing in the history of the industry. They put a man in a Crash costume outside Nintendo's headquarters with a megaphone, calling out Mario by name.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
That's the whole case, in one image. Lara was a star Sony had to rent. Spyro was a sweetheart who arrived second. Pa-Rapper was a secret the West never learned. But Crash was deployed. Sony aimed him at their rival like a sniper. TV ads, taunts, attitude, and the world took the hint. The playground didn't debate it. The magazines didn't debate it. When you closed your eyes and thought PlayStation, a Bandicoot appeared. He even cracked Japan, a Western character succeeding where Western characters almost never did. The company refused to appoint a face. Their marketing found one anyway, and for the rest of the generation, the crown Kutaragi wouldn't hand out sat on Crash's head in everything but ceremony. Number one, the people's mascot, and Sony's, whether they admitted it or not. But this story has one last twist, and you already hold half of it. You know Crash was never Sony's. Universal owned him, same as Spyro. And Sony understood exactly what that meant, because when the era ended and Naughty Dog walked away from Crash, by most accounts, Sony tried to fix it. They went to Universal and tried to buy Crash outright. Universal said no. And everything after is the cost of that no. Crash went multi-platform onto every rival console, sold to one corporation, swallowed by another, and today, the true mascot of the PlayStation 1, the character sent to Nintendo's front door to fight Sony's war, belongs to Microsoft. The face of the PlayStation is an Xbox character. Sony never wanted a mascot, so when one showed up anyway, they used him, but they never paid to keep him, and by the time they understood what he was worth, he wasn't for sale. So that's my verdict. Crash Bandicoot, the true mascot of the PlayStation 1. But step back, because there's one final truth hiding under this whole story. It was never up to Sony to name their mascot. It wasn't up to the publishers or the developers. A mascot isn't decided in a boardroom. It's decided on playgrounds, in living rooms, in arguments exactly like the one that's already happening in the comments. The crown never belonged to Sony. It belonged to us, the kids who grew up on that great box. I gave that crown to Crash, but now it's time to see if you agree. You've seen my decision, Crash, Spyro, Lara, Pa-Rapper. Now it's time to show me yours. Leave me a comment with your order, from most likely mascot to least, and more importantly, defend your choices. Sound off below, I read every single comment. And this was only the PS1, because the PlayStation 2 had its own war, new contenders, new claims, and an even messier fight for the crown. That's the next episode. Subscribe so you're there when it starts. I'm Dandana Squidz, and this is the home of retro, classic, and nostalgia gaming. Much love, fam. I'll see you in the next one.